It was a Thursday night when I saw her. Not late, not too dark yet. Just that hour when the sky begins to shift from blue to black and the neighborhood lights start to flicker on one by one. I had just finished my shift at the store on 8th Street. It was a normal day, really. Nothing unusual. I had stocked the shelves, cleaned up, punched out, and started walking home like I always did. To save time, I took the shortcut behind the soccer fields. There's a pedestrian path back there that cuts between the trees and leads straight toward the old water tower. Most people in town avoid it after sunset. It's not dangerous, just forgotten. Too quiet, too dark. But I've never had a reason to be afraid of it. Until now. She was sitting on the bench near the broken bleachers, just past the halfway point of the trail. I saw her from a distance first, a small figure hunched forward, elbows resting on her knees, head down. She wasn't moving much. I figured maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she was just taking a break. As I got closer, I recognized her. Not personally, but I'd seen her around school. Avery Moss, 17. Long brown hair, usually tied back. Quiet type, always polite. She worked part-time at the library on weekends. She was the kind of girl who blended into the background, until you noticed how calm she always looked. How collected. But that night, she didn't look calm. She looked lost. She lifted her head when I passed. Our eyes met briefly. She didn't smile. I didn't wave. I kept walking. I didn't stop. That moment has been replaying in my mind over and over again since then. It was only a second. Maybe less. But I remember her face. I remember how pale it looked under the dull glow of the street lamp. I remember how tightly she had her arms crossed over her hoodie. And most of all, I remember the way she didn't say a word. I told myself she wanted to be alone, that she looked like she didn't want to talk to anyone. And that's the excuse I still try to believe. That was 4 nights ago. The next morning, she was missing. I didn't see the news right away. It wasn't until I got to work that someone mentioned it. They said a girl from our town hadn't come home Thursday night, that her parents called the police, that she was last seen leaving her friend's house around 9:30 p.m. A few hours later, her photo was everywhere. On TV, online, flyers, Avery Moss, last seen near Fairview Fields. That was where I had seen her, sitting on that bench. I told no one. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it didn't matter. Maybe I was afraid that people would ask why I didn't stop, why I didn't say anything, why I just kept walking. Maybe because I didn't want to admit I had seen someone in need and walked away. The guilt crept in slowly. At first, it was just a pit in my stomach. Then it became sleepless nights. Now it's all I think about. I can't shake the feeling that if I had stopped, if I had asked her if she was okay, maybe she wouldn't be gone. Yesterday, I walked that same path again. I don't even know why. Maybe I hoped to find something. Or maybe I hoped to find nothing, just to prove to myself that it was all in my head. But the bench was gone, not vandalized, not burned, just gone, like it had never been there at all. No bolts, no broken pieces, just flat ground where it used to sit. That unsettled me more than I can explain, because nobody seemed to notice. No one online, no one at the store, no one even mentioned it. I did a double take, checked again, nothing. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed something taped to my apartment door. A plain white envelope, no name, no return address. I opened it. Inside was a photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance, slightly tilted. It showed me, walking past Avery. She was on the bench. I was a few steps beyond her, head turned forward. Someone had been watching. After I found the photo, everything started to change. Not all at once. At first, it was just small things, like how my hands would shake a little when I picked up my keys, how the silence in my apartment suddenly felt heavier. I started double-checking the locks before I went to bed. Then I started checking them twice. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone had found an old security cam feed or snapped a photo from a nearby window. Maybe it was just a scare tactic, a prank. But deep down, I knew it wasn't random. Someone had been there. Someone had seen what I hadn't even realized I was witnessing. The photo was proof. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was part of it. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. What would I say? That someone had left a picture of me walking past a missing girl. That I hadn't stopped, hadn't said anything, and now someone else knew it. No one would believe me. Or worse, they would. So I kept my mouth shut and acted like everything was normal. But it wasn't. The next few days blurred together. I went to work, came home, tried to sleep, failed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment again. Avery sitting on that bench. The way she looked at me without really seeing me. And then that image of myself in the photo walking away. I couldn't forget it. And someone clearly didn't want me to. 2 nights after the photo, I heard something outside my window. It was past 1 a.m. I was lying in bed, eyes wide open, still too wired to sleep. The sound was soft, like gravel being stepped on. Slow, deliberate. I froze, didn't get up, didn't turn on the light. Just waited. I heard it again. A faint scuff, like a boot dragging slightly. Then silence. I forced myself out of bed, heart pounding. I inched to the window and carefully pulled the curtain back just enough to peek outside. Nothing. Just darkness and the vague outline of the tree line across the street. But the next morning, there were footprints in the dirt under my window. Deep, defined, facing the house. That wasn't a prank. That was a message. The fear stayed with me, but something else started growing beneath it. Curiosity. Or maybe it was guilt looking for redemption. I started looking into Avery's case. I read every article, every update. Not that there were many. The police were treating it like a missing person case. But after the first 72 hours, things went quiet. No new leads, no suspects, no press conferences. It was as if she had been swallowed by the town itself. I found a few posts from friends, mostly vague tributes, photos of her at school, captions about how kind she was, how they hoped she'd come back. But none of them mentioned where she might have gone. None talked about that path behind the fields. I was the only one who saw her there, or at least I thought I was. That weekend, I did something stupid. I went back. I waited until just before dusk and walked the same trail. Slow, careful steps, phone in my pocket, heart pounding the whole way. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe to see something the police missed. Maybe to find her backpack, a shoe, and a note. But the bench was still gone. The ground where it had been was smoother now, flattened, like someone had come back and packed down the dirt. There was something off about the air. It smelled too clean, like bleach and wet leaves. I stood there for a long time, listening, watching. Then I saw it, just behind where the bench used to be, half buried under a loose pile of pine needles, was a hair tie, black, simple, the kind you find on any teenager's wrist. But it had a tiny silver charm on it, shaped like a crescent moon. I remembered it from the photo Mia had posted. Avery had been wearing that bracelet. The charm matched. I didn't touch it, just stared at it, then took a photo with my phone and left. That night, I finally broke. I texted Mia. Hey, I know this is weird, but I think I saw Avery the night she went missing. It took her a while to respond. What? Where? On the path behind Fairview Fields. She was sitting on the bench. A pause. Then, there's no bench back there. I stared at her reply for a long time. Then I sent the photo of the hair tie. No response. I waited. A minute. 5, 10. Still nothing. Then finally, you should stop asking questions. That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just a warning. I couldn't sleep after that. I kept staring at my phone, reading the message over and over again. Something was wrong. Deeply, seriously wrong. The bench being gone, the photo, the footprints, the charm, and now Mia telling me to stay quiet. She was hiding something, or someone had gotten to her. I didn't know which scared me more. 2 days later, I found another envelope. This one wasn't on my door. It was slipped under my windshield wiper at work. Same plain white. No writing. Inside was another photo. This time, it was Avery, but not from the night I saw her. She was in a different outfit, standing in front of a car I didn't recognize. She looked nervous, like she was waiting for something or someone. On the back, someone had written, "She got in the car." No license plate in the photo, just the back half of a silver sedan, blurred enough to be useless. But it wasn't the car that made my hand shake. It was the fact that someone had this photo, that someone had been following her long before she disappeared, documenting her movements, watching, planning, and now they were showing it to me, not to help, not to solve anything, to remind me that they still know where I am. I wish I could say I turned it in, that I finally told someone, but I didn't. I don't know who to trust. Not Mia, not the cops, not even myself anymore. All I know is, this wasn't just a random disappearance. Someone made Avery vanish, and whoever they are, they haven't finished yet. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not after the second photo, not after Mia's message. I was scared, yes, terrified actually. But something about the silence around Avery's case felt worse than the danger itself. It was like the whole town had agreed to forget she ever existed. And maybe that was the most dangerous part. On Monday, I took the day off work and went to the trail one more time. I told myself I was going to retrace everything, document what I could, maybe bring it to someone who'd listen, someone outside this place. The local cops? I didn't trust them. Not after Holloway suddenly transferred and no one mentioned it again. The path was empty, quiet, same as always, same as never. I filmed everything on my phone. The flattened earth where the bench had been, the pine needles still scattered near where I'd found the hair tie. But it was something else that caught my attention this time. Something I hadn't noticed before. Just off the trail, buried behind a cluster of trees, was a small wooden stake. It was barely visible, like someone had tried to cover it with dirt and leaves. A thin piece of red tape flapped at the top. I approached it slowly. At the base, partially buried, was a plastic evidence marker, the kind you see in crime scene photos. There had been an investigation here, but no one ever said anything about it. I took photos, lots of them. My hands were shaking, but I got close enough to see there were faint tire tracks near the stake, faded now, like they were weeks old. But they were there, proof. Something had happened here, and someone had tried to erase it. I drove straight to the local newspaper office. Not the big one, the little independent place that barely printed once a week and mostly covered school board meetings and high school sports. I asked for the editor, A woman in her 60s came out. Gray bob, no makeup, looked tired in that permanent kind of way. "I need to show you something," I said. She let me sit. I told her everything. The path, the photos, the note, Mia, all of it. She didn't interrupt. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You're not the first person to come in with something strange about that case." I blinked. "What?" She opened a drawer, pulled out a thin manila folder, and slid it across the desk. Inside were 4 pages. Handwritten notes, some printed emails, one black and white photo. Different girl, same area, missing. 2016. No official connection. No press coverage outside a missing person poster. "She was never found," the editor said. "Just like Avery." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "This isn't new," she added. "It just doesn't get talked about." That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I sat with that folder open on my bed, rereading the details. The girl in the photo, her name was Kayla James, had gone missing after walking home from a tutoring session. Last seen less than a mile from the same trail. Everything was too similar, too quiet, too buried. I looked back at the photos I'd taken. The stake, the tire tracks, the bracelet, the photo of Avery near the sedan. It wasn't random. These weren't disappearances. They were removals. Systematic, clean, intentional. Around 2 a.m., I heard a knock at the door. Not loud. 3 soft taps. I didn't move. I sat in silence, every light in the apartment already off. Then another knock. 3 again. No voice, no note, just presence. I waited. Eventually, the knocking stopped. I crept to the door, looked through the peephole. No one. But on the floor, another envelope. I stared at it for what felt like an hour before I picked it up. Inside was no photo, no message, just a single item, a crescent moon charm, just like the one on Avery's bracelet, except this one was snapped in half. I didn't sleep after finding the charm. I kept it on the table, half snatched, the metal bent and cold under my fingertips. I turned it over again and again, as if it might whisper something, as if some hidden message had been carved into its broken edge. But it didn't speak. It just lay there, heavy, final. I knew then. This wasn't about warning me anymore. This was a countdown. That morning, I packed everything I had. The photos, the copies, the notes. I didn't trust my phone, so I scribbled down addresses and names on paper. People who might care. People outside this place. I had to get out before they took that option away. But as I opened the door to leave, something stopped me. There was a letter taped to it, plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a single page, typed. "You saw her? You ignored her? You kept walking? You didn't call? You waited? You talked? And now, we're listening." No signature, just that final sentence. She's not the only one buried in silence. I drove without blinking. Hours passed. I passed 3 state lines. My fingers cramped around the steering wheel. I stopped only once, at a gas station somewhere in Indiana. And even then, I kept checking my rearview mirror. At a diner, I used a burner phone I'd bought on the way. I called the newspaper editor. The number was disconnected. I called Mia. Voicemail. I tried the local sheriff's office. The line rang once, then silence. Then it cut. I ended up in a small town I'd never heard of before. Rented a cheap motel room, paid in cash. Pinned the notes and photos to the wall, like it was my own investigation board. I kept going over everything, looking for what I missed. The truth was, I hadn't missed anything. I had just finally seen it for what it was. This wasn't a case. It was a system. They didn't just take people, they made everyone else forget them, erase them, deny them. Avery hadn't disappeared. She'd been rewritten. The charm is still with me. I keep it in my pocket now. Not because I need a reminder. I don't. But because it's the only proof I have left that she was ever real. That I was real. That any of this happened. I don't know how long I can keep running. I don't know if I'll be able to tell anyone what really happened. But if you're reading this, it means I got through. Somehow. Somewhere. And if you're in a quiet town, where people don't talk about the ones who vanished, where everyone knows, but no one speaks, where benches disappear and photos arrive with no return, don't ignore it. Don't keep walking. Don't become the next silence.